Hebrews 11, verse 23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. Well, today is Mother's Day, and out of the mouth of a few second graders, let me give you the answers to a few commonly asked questions about mothers. Here's some words of wisdom from second graders. Why did God make mothers? One second grader said, she's the only one who knows where the Scotch tape is. Or to help us out of there when we were getting born. Well, how did God make mothers? He used dirt just like the rest of us. Another second grader, God made my mom the same like He made me. He just used bigger parts. Well, what ingredients were used when God made mothers? One child said, God makes moms out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world and one dab of mean. Or he started with men's bones, then he mostly used string, I think. Well, why did God give you your mother and not some other mom? We're related. Good answer. Another child, God knew she likes me a lot more than other people's moms like me. Well, what kind of little girl was your mom? Here's where it gets interesting. One child said, my mom has always been my mom and none of that other stuff. I don't know, I wasn't there, but my guess would be pretty bossy. They say she used to be nice. Well, why did your mom marry your dad? Oh boy. One child said, my dad makes the best spaghetti in the world and my mom eats a lot. Or I like this one. My grandma says that mom didn't have her thinking cap on. Well, what's the difference between moms and dads? Moms know how to talk to teachers without scaring them. Dads are taller and stronger, but moms have the real power because she's who you've got to ask if you want to sleep over at a friend's house. Here's a great one. What does your mom do in her spare time? Moms don't do spare time. What would it take to make your mom perfect? One little girl said, on the inside, she's already perfect. Outside, I think some plastic surgery. And if you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? Well, she has a weird thing about me keeping my room clean. I'd get rid of that. Or another second grader, I'd make her smarter. She would know it was my sister who did it, not me. And lastly, I'd like for her to get rid of those invisible eyes in the back of her head. That could have been one of my kids. Well, in this morning's text, we find the story of a Hebrew mother, a good mother. From all accounts, there was not one thing we would want to change about this mom. Her name was Jochebed, and her 3 kids were Aaron, Miriam, and the most famous of the 3, Moses. Jochebed mothered a nation's deliverer. Our text credits Moses' upbringing not just to his mom, but to his parents. Moses had the blessing of a good dad as well as a faithful mom. Exodus 6, verse 20 identifies them both by name, Amram and Jochebed. Exodus provides us other details as well. In chapter 2, verse 2, we're told, so the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. Notice here the writer of Hebrews speaks of parents, while the author of Exodus focuses on the woman. We know that Exodus was written by a full-grown Moses, whereas Hebrews was authored by an objective third party many years after the incident. The perspective of Hebrews is obviously from the outside looking in, while Exodus is written by an insider. Moses himself drew from his own memories. And what I gather from all of this is that Dad was in the mix. He was on the job. Amram was no absentee father. He made a vital contribution, providing a home and giving his family structure and guidance and courage and resources. But what the child remembered most was the touch and tenderness of his mother. Moses recalled Jochebed's tender words and nurturing manner. Oh, Dad played a vital role, an indispensable role. No one today is diminishing the job of a dad. Yet there is still a special relationship between a mother and her child. Several years ago, I did some firsthand research on this. And I discovered that mom tattoos outnumbered dad tattoos probably 30-1. I actually interviewed Painless Paul at Lucky Tattoos over here on Highway 78. Paul said that folks are far more likely to get a tattoo tribute to mom than to dad. As a matter of fact, Painless Paul said that when someone asks for a dad tattoo, it's usually after the old boy has kicked a bucket. It's a memorial. But mom gets honored with ink while she's still alive. Among the painted population, memories of a mother conjure up far more tender feelings than that of a dad. And this is not only true if you have a tattoo. Have you noticed whenever the camera combs the bench at a college football game, you never hear one of the players shout out, "I love you, Dad." Never. Their words are always directed toward mom. A mom has a special place in every child's heart. When my firstborn came into the world, my dad took me aside and he warned me. He said, "Sandy, your son is going to love Kathy more than he's going to love you." It's true. Dad told me, he said, "Get used to it and don't be jealous of it. A son just loves his mom more than he loves his dad. It's just a fact of life." Generally speaking, moms have a tenderness and tolerance that dads lack. You know, you've heard of standoffs between a dad and a child. "Well, I'll never speak to him again," or "I'm done with him." But I've never heard of a standoff like that between a mom and her child. A good mom never cuts off a child. No matter how far that child falls, she still sees beauty in her kids and refuses to let it die. Poet John Killinger, he words it this way: "I believe in the love of all mothers and its importance in the lives of the children they bear. It is stronger than steel, softer than down, and more resilient than a green sapling on the hillside. Her love closes wounds, melts disappointments, and enables the weakest child to stand tall and straight in the fields of adversity." And this was the love that Jochebed had for Moses. As Hebrews tells us, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child and they were not afraid of the king's command. Amram led the way, supplying vision and bravery and wisdom, but Jochebed followed in step, protecting her child, believing in her child, even risking her own life to save her son's life. Together they made a good parental team. This morning we want to look deeper into our text, and as we do, I think we'll find that the parents of Moses had 3 chief attributes. They were protective of their child. They saw potential in their child, and they relied on God's providence in the life of their child. And these are the same ingredients that make good parents today. Hebrews 11 verse 23 describes the faith of a parent. Parents hold on to their kids and protect them from danger. Parents look at their child's beauty and talents and encourage their potential. And eventually, parents let go of their children and trust them to God's providence. And all three actions, holding on and looking at and letting go, require great faith. Parents need faith. Well, notice first, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents. Amram and Jochebed were quick to recognize this world is a dangerous place. It's not conducive or safe for the rearing of children. Even today, our world is full of predators and evildoers who desire to harm our kids. And like Amram and Jochebed, it's a parent's duty to hide their children while they're vulnerable and innocent until they grow and can stand on their own. In their formative years, it's a mom's responsibility to hold on to her children and to protect them. Like an animal in the wild, it's a mama bear's instinct to guard her babies. Hey, if parents don't protect their kids, who in the world will? Yesterday's safety network of media and schools and neighbors has disappeared today. Apart from the church, parents are on their own. Imagine the situation here facing Amram and Jochebed. An evil, power-mongering despot, Egypt's Pharaoh, wanted to control the expanding population of the Hebrew people. So he commanded all male babies 2 years old and under to be thrown into the Nile River. He wanted to feed the baby boys to the crocodiles. The Jewish secular historian Josephus, he provides us an additional insight into the possible motive behind Pharaoh's death decree. Josephus writes this: one of Egypt's sacred scribes, who was very discerning in foretelling future events, truly told the king that about this time there would be a child born to the Israelites, who, if he were reared, would bring the Egyptian dominion low and would raise the Israelites. Pharaoh wanted to crush this Israelite rival. His first plan was to recruit the Hebrew midwives, use them to sabotage the deliveries of the male infants. But when the midwives refused to cooperate, Pharaoh took off the gloves. He issued an executive order: infanticide by drowning. Can you imagine a crueler way for a child to die? A baby tossed into the current, gurgling water into its lungs, then his bloated body being shredded by the crocs? Your son alligator bait? But as gruesome a picture as I've painted, it's not unlike the spiritual dangers facing our kids today. The Egyptian Pharaoh wore a coiled serpent on his crown. The serpent was a symbol of Satan. And no less than the devil and his nasty demons are out to attack our kids. Oh, you know about the child snatchers and the pedophiles and the drug dealers and the gang members and the school shooters. But your kid is threatened in far more subtle ways every day. What your child thinks and believes is under assault on a daily basis. A materialistic media, a sexualized and coarsening culture, a godless and violent entertainment industry, all want to capture the soul of your child. Crocodiles of a different sort are circling in the water to feed on our children today. Parents have to be vigilant and remain in protection mode. Did you know the average American child sees 40,000 television commercials a year? 40,000. Parents, don't be naive. Advertisers spend $15 billion a year targeting your kids, trying to influence their values. If it didn't work, they'd save their money. Annually, the typical teenage girl views 1,500 references to sexual activity on television. When Taylor Swift is the role model for our little girls, you know we're in trouble. All parents need to operate under a Homeland Security red alert. Ellen Goodman is a liberal columnist. Her opinions run in the Boston Globe and in the Washington Post. Recently, though, she made a comment about parenting that really resonated with me. She said, at some point between Lamaze and PTA, it becomes clear that one of your main jobs as a parent is to counter the culture. What the media delivers to kids in masses, you are expected to rebut one at a time. Parents are expected to protect their children from an increasingly hostile environment. Are the kids being sold junk food? Just say no. Is TV bad? Turn it off. Are there messages about sex, drugs, violence all around? Counter the culture. Mothers and fathers are expected to screen virtually every aspect of their child's life. Parents need to check the ratings on the movies, read the labels on the CDs, find out if there's MTV in the house next door, all the while staying in touch with school and in their free time earning a living. Parents see themselves in a struggle for the hearts and minds of their own children. It isn't that they can't say no, it's that there's so much to say no to. There has been a fundamental shift, she writes. We once expected parents to raise children in accordance with a dominant culture of morality and decency. Today, parents are expected to raise their children in opposition to the culture. It's what makes child raising harder. It's not just that American families have less time with their kids. It's that we have to spend more of this time battling with our own culture. It's like trying to get your kids to eat green beans after they've been told all day about the wonders of Milky Way bars. How true is that? Our text tells us that for 3 months, Amram and Jochebed put out enormous time and effort to keep baby Moses protected and shielded and secluded. They made sure that Moses was fed and changed and occupied so that he wouldn't cry and set off alerts among the Egyptians. They prayed every day that he wouldn't catch the croup or get colicky. Imagine what would have happened if Moses had coughed or cried at the wrong time. What if while changing his diaper, Amram stuck little Moses with one of those diaper pins that I used to use years ago? What if he stuck himself with one of those diaper pins, which I used to do years ago? One whimper, and it could have been curtains for both parents and child. This is why Jochebed went to bed exhausted every single night. I hate to inform you younger parents, but I've gone to bed exhausted almost every night for the last 41 years, which incidentally is how long I've been a parent. Reminds me of the story I once heard. One day, Dad was reading in the living room when my brother and I decided that we could play basketball without breaking anything. When I took a shot that redesigned the glass table, my mother came in with a stick and said, "So help me, I'll bust you in half." Without lifting his head from his book, my father said, "Why would you want twice as many?" Hey, some days you wonder. Parenting is a tough gig. It's not for the faint of heart. And I'm just a dad. It's more so for you moms. Parents, one day your child will be equipped to make their own choices and fend for themselves. But until then, you've got to protect them. Don't get lax. You can't wear out. Parents need to rise to the challenge. Parents need to hold on to their kids and protect them as long as necessary. But mothers also should look at their kids and recognize their potential. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child. They saw a beauty in Moses. According to Josephus, Moses' dad, Amram, was a man of prayer. He had been interceding for the nation, asking God for someone to deliver his people from slavery. One night, Amram had a vision. God promised him a son who would save Israel. God said of the boy, "His memory shall be famous while the world lasts." After Amram awoke, he shared his vision with his wife. In other words, the couple had clues of their child's destiny before he was born. And upon his birth, nothing caused them to doubt God's promise. Moses was a beautiful baby. Actually, Josephus tells us that Moses was so handsome as an infant that while in the court of Pharaoh, people would go out of their way to walk by the nursery just to admire the boy's good looks. My parents say they had the same problem with my brother. When Moses was born, Jochebed saw that the child was beautiful, that there was something about Moses that indicated all these predictions were true. Her child did have a special God-ordained quality. Jochebed was a good mom because she saw her child's potential. Good moms believe in God and they believe in their children. They sense and see their heavenly, eternal value. God sensitizes moms to his beautiful purposes in the lives of her children. See, a good parent values their child's uniqueness. He or she looks at their child. When my kids were small, I would always walk into their room and watch them sleep at night. At times, Kathy and I did it together. And we'd dream of where those little feet would go and what those little hands would do. And we'd rededicate them to God all over again. Though they didn't know it, even when they were teenagers, sometimes I would watch them sleep when I could stay up late enough. And I would think similar thoughts about them, their destinies. A good parent studies their children and takes note of their talents and strengths. And then they tailor the child's training to bring out that potential. A 5-year-old Heather was being scolded by her mom. "Heather, why can't you be as well behaved as Stacy next door?" Heather protested, said, "Mom, I'll never be as good as Stacy. She's a doctor's kid." Mom scratched her head, said, "What does that have to do with anything?" Little Heather answered, "Mom, everyone knows the doctor always keeps the best babies for himself." And that's how a good mom feels about her kids. She's not blind to their flaws. She certainly disciplines their rebellion, but she never loses sight of the good and beautiful in her children. No matter how wayward they might become, she never overlooks their value. John Ashcroft is a former Attorney General of the United States. He credits his success to the prayers of his dad. As a small boy, Ashcroft would wake up, not to the crowing of a rooster, not to the smell of coffee brewing, but to a father's prayers. Often he would join his dad. He would curl up under his dad's giant frame. He recalls, he says, "I was shielded by his body as he pleaded for my soul." Ashcroft says that he never heard his dad pray for his son's happiness or for a bigger house or car or bank account. Ashcroft remembers, he prayed that our hearts would be ignited and inspired to do things of eternal consequence. He quotes his dad's petition, "Lord, turn our eyes from the temporal, the physical, the menial, and toward the eternal, the spiritual, the noble." Ashcroft sums up his father's influence on his family. "My father never pressured us toward achievement. He simply dangled before us the possibilities. Thanks to his example, we sometimes took the bait." Parents, are you dangling possibilities in front of your kids? Ken Langley tells of a time when he was painting the laundry room with his 10-year-old son. Ken had the brush, Justin had the roller. And every time his son left the room, Ken would grab the roller and re-roll what his son had painted. Ken didn't mind his son's help, but it was frustrating to watch the boy stretch for places that he couldn't reach. Ken was afraid the boy would step in the paint or spill it on the floor, make a mess. When he saw Justin do it again, Ken shouted, "I told you to stop stretching. I'll get that." Justin replied, "Okay, Dad, I won't do it again." Ken later recalled, "In the silence that followed, I wondered how many times I've given my kids the message, stop stretching. I've said, you can't, it's too hard, let me do it. Don't be unrealistic, don't reach so high." Too often, I'm afraid. I hope now they weren't listening. It's terrible to see a parent let his own fears hold back a child's potential. If mom and dad ain't behind you, who is? It scarred a young George Washington when he had wasted his allowance. His mom scolded him, "Oh, George, you never did have a head for money." Can you imagine the trauma to Samuel Morse, inventor of the telegraph, when his mom scolded him, "Sam, stop tapping your fingers, it's driving me crazy." Or poor Neil Armstrong, future astronaut, after his mother said, "Neil, you have no more business taking flying lessons than a man in the moon." It's always sad when a mom or dad discourages their child. A friend, Coach David, he sits right over there. He told me about the time it happened at the ballpark. The mother of a little boy on his team took her son home before the game was over. David realized that the kid was coming up to bat that inning, and if the child left early, it would force the team to take an automatic out. He called out to the mom. He said, "Why don't you let Billy hit? If he doesn't come to bat this inning, we'll have to take an out." And right there in front of a grandstand full of people, she shouted, "Ah, he's no good. He'll make an out anyway. We've got to go." To the contrary, a good parent believes in their child. Good moms and dads nurture the beauty in their children. Well, Amram and Jochebed held on to their child and protected him. Together they looked at their child and realized his potential. And finally, moms should let go of their children and trust in God's providence. See, Jochebed was a mom who believed that God cared more about her child's future than she did. She trusted God to be involved in her son's circumstances. A good mom believes that she's not alone in the rearing of her children. Understand this term providence. It's God's overarching intervention in human affairs. It's His involvement in our circumstances. Providence is God's means of accomplishing His purposes through events beyond our control. And there comes a point with every parent where they are no longer in control of where their child goes and what their child does and who their child is with. It's in those moments that a parent has to trust God in God's love for their child and in His providence over circumstances. Bible commentator John Darby sums up divine providence. God's ways are behind the scenes, but He moves all the scenes that He is behind. And Jochebed trusted God to move some scenes in her son's life. Exodus 2 verse 3 tells us what this mother did. When she could no longer hide Moses, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. She waterproofed a little basket. She created a floating bassinet and laid her baby on what had been a watery grave for so many Hebrew infants. And then she launched that basket downstream into the flow of hidden undertows and unfed crocodiles. Here, a mom trusted God to control the current and to bring her precious son to safety. She laid that basket in the Nile and let go of her son into the loving arms of God. This is what Tresenda Fox did in December 2005. When her third-story apartment caught fire, Tricinda's 1-month-old infant began to choke on the billowing smoke. She held her son out the window for as long as she possibly could, but her arms gave way, and she had to turn loose of her baby. That baby fell 3 floors. But here's where God's providence prevailed. There was a New York City housing employee named Felix Vasquez. He saw the situation, and he moved in position to catch the child. It just so happens Felix is the catcher on a local baseball team. And since Felix is also a lifeguard, after he caught the baby, he was able to administer mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. It all saved the baby's life. Obviously, Felix Vasquez was hailed a hero, but in a sense, it wasn't Felix that saved the child as much as a mom's decision to trust in God's providence and let go. After Tricinda was rescued, she commented on her horrifying ordeal. I prayed that someone would catch him. I said, God, please save my son. If Tricinda had held on to her baby for too long, he would have suffocated. And figuratively speaking, Christian parents can make the same mistake. You can hold on too long. A father or a mother can smother a child. As I said earlier, parents need to hold on to their kids when they're young and provide them protection, but there comes a point in time when a parent has to let go. Kids have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet and think independently of mom and dad. If I shelter them completely and create a totally safe environment, they'll never learn to make it in an antichrist world. I want to teach my kids to live by faith. Hey, I believe in keeping the reins tight, trust me. But I also believe in turning those reins loose a little at a time. Kids need to be exposed to the world, but in small doses. Think of a child learning to swim. You outfit her with water wings. The inflatables keep her head above the surface until she becomes accustomed to the buoyancy of the pool. But if you never lose the wings, she'll never swim. Sure, it's risky to take off those wings, and the child has to be monitored. And there's a good chance he or she is going to struggle. But this is how you learn to stay afloat. And likewise, kids will never learn to swim in this culture if we keep them totally shielded. A mom has to let go at some point. A dad has to turn loose. Pastor Tim Kimmel gives this advice to Christian parents. You may not want to hear this, but raising safe Christian kids is a spiritual disaster in the making. Your effort will produce shallow faith and wimpy believers. Kids raised in an environment that stresses safety above all else are on track to be pushovers. They tend to end up either overly critical of the world system to the point where they won't have anything to do with people, an idea that comes directly from Satan's playbook, or they become naive about the world system, which ultimately makes them putty in Satan's hands. Few of these kids know how to have a spiritual impact on a wicked world. It sounds ironic, but if safety is the sole priority of your parenting, it could prove to be dangerous to your child. The initial impulse of a caring parent is to make their child's life as easy as possible. But that's not the best long-term strategy. When it comes to what's needed, easy isn't always better. Life is hard, and parents won't always be there to shelter their children. Thus, from the day your child enters the world, a parent should begin the process of letting go of that child. Rather than shelter my children from the world for their first 18 years, I would rather that child be exposed to the world gradually before he or she heads off to college, so I can be there to help them process life and integrate their Christianity into real-life situations. This approach appears risky, but Jochebed also took a risk when she placed her baby in that basket and pushed him out into the river. Jochebed believed that God was downstream in her child's life. Do you believe that? I hope so. God was moving props and people to accomplish His purposes. See, a parent moves with confidence when he or she trusts in God's providence. With your children, you've got to trust that God is downstream in their life. Listen to how God steered Moses' ark and who He brought across his path. Exodus 2, then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. Here God's providence is at work. And when she had opened it, she saw the child. And behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And so the maiden went and called the child's mother. I mean, how good can this get? And then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." And so the woman took the child and nursed him. What an amazing work of God's providence. Moses gets adopted by the Pharaoh's own daughter. He goes from Egypt's most wanted to a member of the royal family. Moses will grow up on Pharaoh's dime. And because Jochebed believed God enough to let go, she stayed in the picture. Pharaoh's daughter pays her wages to nurse her own infant. Ladies, imagine being paid a salary to breastfeed your baby. That'd be a good deal. And since children in Egypt were nursed for a lot longer than they are today, this gave Jochebed the opportunity she'd prayed for to teach God's truth to her son Moses. In closing, many characteristics make a good parent: love, fairness, patience, consistency, creativity, firmness tempered with tenderness. But the longer I live and the more that I watch, I've become more and more convinced that the number one ingredient of a good parent is faith. Verse 23 tells us, by faith, Amram and Jochebed raised their son. Imagine, despite the dangers, these parents pushed their son out onto uncertain waters, trusting God to be downstream in their son's life. That took faith. Faith enough to hold on and protect. Faith enough to look at and see potential. Faith enough to let go and trust in God's providence. A request of His disciples to Jesus should be the prayer of every parent. You remember when they said, "Lord, increase our faith." May the Lord increase our faith today. Let's all raise our kids by faith.